Chapter 3 At the Gates of Tashbaan. "My name," said the girl at once, "is Aravis Tarkina, and I am the only daughter of Kidrash Tarkina, the son of Rishti Tarkan, the son of Kidrash Tarkan, the son of Ilsobret Tisrok, the son of Ardib Tisrok, who was descended in a right line from the god Tash. My father is lord of the province of Kalavar, and is one who has the right of standing on his feet in his shoes before the face of Tisrok himself. May he live forever. My mother, on whom the peace be the peace of the gods, is dead, and my father has married another wife. One of my brothers has fallen in battle against the rebels of the far west, and the other is a child. Now it came to pass that my father's wife, my stepmother, hated me, and the sun appeared dark in her eyes as long as I lived in my father's house. And so she persuaded my father to promise me in marriage to Ahashta Tarkan. Now this Ahashta is of base birth, though in these latter years he has won the favor of the Tisrok, may he live forever, by flattery and evil counsels, and is now made a Tarkan and a lord of many cities, and is likely to be chosen as Grand Vizier when the present Grand Vizier dies. Moreover, he is at least 60 years old, and has a hump on the back of his face that resembles that of an ape. Nevertheless, my father, because of the wealth and power of Ahashta, and being persuaded by his wife, sent messengers offering me in marriage. And the offer was favorably accepted, and Ahashta sent word that he would marry me this very year, at the time of high summer. When this news was brought to me, the sun appeared dark in my eyes, and I laid myself on my bed and wept for a day. But on the second day I rose and washed my face, and caused my mare Hwin to be saddled, and took off with a sharp dagger, which my brother had carried in the western wars, and rode out alone. And when my father's house was out of sight, and I had come to a green open place in a certain wood, where there were no dwellings of men, I dismounted from Hwin my mare, and took out the dagger. Then I parted my clothes where I thought the readiest way lay to my heart, and I prayed to all the gods that as soon as I was dead I might find myself with my brother. After that I shut my eyes and my teeth, and prepared to drive the dagger into my heart. But before I had done so, this mare spoke with the voice of one of the daughters of men, and said, "O my mistress, do not by any means destroy yourself, for if you live you might have good fortune. But all the dead are dead alike." "I didn't say it half so well as that," muttered the mare. "Hush, ma'am, hush," said Bree, who was thoroughly enjoying the story. "She's telling it in the Grand Carloman manner, and no storyteller in Tisrock's court could do it better. Pray go on, Tarkina." "When I heard the language of men uttered by a mare," continued Aravis, "I said to myself, the fear of death has disordered my reason and subjected me to delusions. But I became full of shame, for none of my lineage ought to fear death more than the biting of a gnat. Therefore I dressed myself a second time to the stabbing. But Hwin came near to me, and put her head in between me and the dagger, and discoursed to me the most excellent reasons, and rebuked me as a mother rebukes her daughter. And now my wonder was so great that I forgot about killing myself, and about Ahashta, and said, 'O my mare, how have you learned to speak like one of the daughters of men?' And Hwin told me what is known to all this company, that in Narnia there are beasts that talk, and how she herself was stolen from thence when she was a little foal. She told me also of the woods and the waters of Narnia, and the castles and the great ships, till I said, 'In the name of Tash and Azeroth and Zardina, Lady of the Night, I have a great wish to be in the country of Narnia.' 'O my mistress,' answered the mare, 'if you were in Narnia you would be happy, for in that land no maiden is forced to marry against her will.' And when we had talked together for a great time, hope returned to me, and I rejoiced that I had not killed myself. Moreover, it was agreed between Win and me that we should steal ourselves away together, and we planned it in this fashion. We returned to my father's house, and I put on my gayest clothes and sang and danced before my father, and pretended to be delighted with the marriage he had prepared for me. Also I said to him, "O my father, and O the delight of my eyes, give me your license and permission to go with one of my maidens alone for 3 days into the woods to do a secret sacrifices to Zardina, Lady of the Night, and of maidens, as it is proper customary for damsels when they must bid farewell to the service of Zardina and prepare themselves for marriage." And he answered, "O my daughter, and O the light of my eyes, so shall it be." But when I came out to the presence of my father, I went immediately to the oldest of slaves, his secretary, who had dandled me on his knees when I was a baby, and loved me more than the air of light. And I swore him to be secret, and begged him to write a certain letter for me. And he wept and implored me to change my resolution. But in the end he said, "To hear is to obey," and did all my will. And I sealed the letter and hid it in my bosom. But what was in the letter?" said Shasta. "Be quiet, youngster," said Bree. "You're spoiling the story. She'll tell us about the letter in the right place. Go on, Tarkina." Then I came to a maid who was to go with me to the woods and perform the rites of Zardina, and told her to wake me very early in the morning. And I became merry with her, and gave her much wine to drink, but I had mixed such things in her cup that I knew she must sleep for a day and a night. As soon as the household of my father had committed themselves to sleep, I arose and put on an armor of my brother's, which I always kept in my chamber in his memory. I put into my girdle all the money I had, and certain choice jewels, and provided myself also with food, and saddled the mare with my own hands, and rode away to the second watch of the night. I directed my course not to the woods, where my father supposed that I would go, but north and east to Tashbaan. Now for 3 days and more I knew that my father would not seek me, being deceived by the words I had said to him. And on the 4th day we arrived at the city of Azimbalda. Now Azimbalda stands at the meeting of many roads, and from it the posts of Tisroc, may he live forever, ride on swift horses to every part of the empire, and is one of those rights and privileges of the greater Tarkans to send messages by them. I therefore went to the chief of the messengers in the house of the imperial post in Azimbalda, and said, "O dispatcher of messages, here is a letter from my uncle Ahashta Tarkin to Kidrash Tarkin, lord of Calabar. Take now these 5 crescents and cause it be sent to him." And the chief of messengers said, "To hear is to obey." This letter was feigned to be written by Ahashta, and it was the significance of the writing, "Ahashta Tarkin to Kidrash Tarkin, salutation and peace. In the name of Tash, the irresistible, the inexplorable. Be it known to you that as I made my journey toward your house to perform the contract of my marriage between me and your daughters Aravis Tarkina, it pleased fortune and the gods that I fell in with her in the forest when she had entered the rites and sacrifices of Zardina according to the custom of maidens. And when I learned who she was, being delighted with her beauty and discretion, I became inflamed with love, and it appeared to me that the sun would be dark to me if I did not marry her at once. Accordingly, I prepared the necessary sacrifices, and married your daughter at the same hour that I met her, and have returned with her to my house. And we both pray and charge you to come hither as speedily as you can, that we might be delighted with your face and speech, and also that you may bring with you the dowry of my wife, which, of course, by reason of great charges and expenses I require without delay. And because thou and I are brothers, I assure myself that you will not be angered by the haste of my marriage, which is the wholly occasioned by the great love I bear for your daughter. And I commit you to the care of the gods." As soon as I had done this, I rode on all the haste from Azimbalda, fearing no pursuit, and expecting that my father, having received such a letter, would send message to Ahasta, Ahashta, or go to him himself, and that before the matter was discovered I should go beyond Tashbaan, and that this pith of my story until this very night, when I was chased by lions and we met you at the swimming of the salt water. And what happened? And what happened to the girl, the one you dropped? Said Shasta. Doubtless she was beaten for sleeping late, said Aravis coolly, but she was a tool and a spy of my stepmother's. I am very glad they should beat her. I say, that was hardly fair, said Shasta. I did not do any of these things for the sake of pleasing you, said Aravis. And there's another thing that I don't understand about the story, said Shasta. You're not grown up. I don't believe you're any older than I am. I don't believe you're as old. How could you be getting married at your age? Aravis said nothing, but Bree said at once, Shasta, don't display your ignorance. They're always married at that age in the great Tarkan families. Shasta turned very red, although it was hardly light enough for the others to see this, and felt snubbed. Aravis asked Bree for his story. Bree told it, and Shasta thought he put a great deal more than he needed about the falls and the bad riding. Bree obviously thought it very funny, but Aravis did not laugh. When Bree had finished, they all went to sleep. Next day, all four of them, 2 horses and 2 humans, continued their journey together. Shasta thought it was much pleasanter when he and Bree were on their own, for now it was Bree and Aravis who did nearly all the talking. Bree had lived a long time in Calormen, and had always been among Tarkans and Tarkans' horses, and so of course knew a great many of the same people and places that Aravis knew. She would always be saying things like, But if you were at the fight of Zulindre, you would have seen my cousin Alamash. And Bree would answer, Oh yes, Alamash. He was only captain of the chariots, you know. I don't quite hold with chariots of the kind of horses who draw chariots. That's not real cavalry, but he is a worthy nobleman. He filled my nosebag with sugar after the taking of Tebeth. Or else Bree would say, I was down at the lake of Mesril that summer. And Iris would say, Oh, Mesril, I have a friend there, Lazaraline Tarkina. What a delightful place it is, those gardens in the valley and the thousands of perfumes. Bree was not in the least trying to leave Shasta out of things, though sometimes Shasta nearly thought he was. People who knew a lot of the same things can hardly help talking about them, and if you're there, you can hardly help feeling that you're out of it. Hwin the mare was rather shy before a great warhorse like Bree, and said very little, and Aravis never spoke to Shasta at all, if she could help it. Soon, however, they had more important things to think of. They were getting near Tashbaan. There were more and larger villages and more people on the roads. They now did nearly all their traveling by night, and hid best as they could during the day. And at every halt they argued about what they were to do when they reached Tashbaan. Everyone had been putting off this difficulty, but now it could be put off no longer. During these discussions, Aravis became a very little, less unfriendly to Shasta. One usually gets on better with people when one is making plans than when one is talking about nothing in particular. Bree said that the first thing to do was to fix a place where they would all promise to meet on the far side of Tashbaan, even if, by any ill luck, they got separated in passing the city. He said the best place would be the tombs of the ancient kings on the very edge of the desert. Things like great stone beehives, he said, you can't possibly miss them, and the best of it is that none of the Calormens will go near them because they think the place is haunted by ghouls and are afraid of it. Aravis asked if it wasn't really haunted by ghouls, but Bree said he was a free Narnian horse and didn't believe these Calormen tales. And then Shasta said he wasn't a Calormen either, and didn't care a straw about the old stories of ghouls. This wasn't quite true, but it rather impressed Aravis, though at the moment it annoyed her too. And of course she said she didn't mind any number of ghouls either. So it was settled that the tombs should be their assembly place on the other side of Tashbaan, and everyone felt that they were getting on it very well, till Hwin humbly pointed out that the real problem was not where they should go, but how they would get, but when they got through Tashbaan, but how they were going to get through it at all. "We'll settle that tomorrow, ma'am," said Bree. "Time for a little sleep now." But it wasn't easy to settle. Aravis's first suggestion was that they should swim across the river below the city during the night and not go into Tashbaan at all. But Bree had two reasons against this. One was that the river mouth was very wide, and it would be far too long a swim for Hwin to do, especially with a rider on her back. He thought it would be too long for himself too, but he said much less about that. The other was that it would be full of shipping, and of course anyone on the deck of a ship who saw two horses swimming past would almost certain to be inquisitive. Shasta thought that they should go up the river above Tashbaan and cross it where it was narrower, but Bree explained that there were gardens and pleasure houses on both banks of the river for miles, and that there would be Tarkins and Tarkinas living in them and riding about the roads and having water parties on the river. In fact, it was the most likely place in the world for meeting someone who would recognize Aravis, or even himself. "We'll have to have a disguise," said Shasta. Hwin said it looked to her as if the safest thing to do was to go right to the city itself from the gate to gate, because one was less likely to be noticed in a crowd. But she approved of the idea of disguises as well. She said, "Both the humans will have to dress in rags and look like peasants or slaves, and all Aravis's armor and our saddles and things must be put into bundles and put on our backs, and the children must pretend to drive us, and people will think we're only packing horses." "My dear Hwin," said Aravis rather scornfully, "as if anyone could mistake Bree for anything but a war-horse, however you describe him." "I should think not, indeed," said Bree, snorting and letting his ears go ever so little back. "I know it's not a very good plan," said Hwin, "but I think it's our only chance. And we haven't been groomed for ages, and we're not looking quite ourselves. At least, I'm sure I'm not. I do think if we get well plastered with mud and go along with our heads low as if we're tired and lazy, and don't lift our hooves hardly at all, we might not be noticed." "My dear madam," said Bree, "have you pictured to yourself how very disagreeably it would be to arrive at Narnia in that condition?" "Well," said Hwin humbly, she was a very sensible man, "the main thing is to get there." Though nobody much liked it, it was Hwin's plan which had to be adopted in the end. It was a troublesome one, and involved a certain amount of what Shasta called stealing, and Bree called raiding. One farm lost a few sacks that evening, and another lost a coil of rope the next. But some tattered old boys' clothes for Aravis to wear had to be fairly bought and paid for in a village. Shasta returned with them in triumph just as the evening was closing in. The others were waiting for him among the trees at the foot of the low range of wooden hills which lay across their path. Everyone was feeling excited because this was the last hill. When they reached the ridge at the top, they would be looking on Tashbaan. "I do wish we were safely past it," muttered Shasta to Hwin. "Oh, I do," said Hwin fervently. That night they wound their way through the woods up to the ridge of a woodcutter's track. And when they had come out of the woods at the top, they could see thousands of lights in the valley down below them. Shasta had no notion of what a great city would be like, and it frightened him. They had their supper, and the children got some sleep, but the horses woke them very early in the morning. The stars were still out, and the grass was terribly cold and wet, but daybreak was just beginning far to the right across the sea. Aravis went a few steps away from the woods, and came back looking odd in her new, ragged clothes, and carrying her real ones in a bundle. These, and her armor and shield and scimitar, and the 2 saddles and the rest of the horse's fine furnishing, were put into sacks. Bree and Hwin had already gotten themselves as dirty and bedraggled as they could, and it remained only to shorten their tails. The only tool for doing this was Arvis's scimitar. One of the packs had to be undone again in order to get it out. It was the longest job, and it rather hurt the horses. "My word," said Bree. "If I wasn't a talking horse, what a lovely kick in the face I could give you. I thought you were going to cut it, not pull it out. That's what it feels like." But in spite of semi-darkness and cold fingers, all was done in the end. The big packs bound on the horses, the rope halters, which they were now wearing instead of bridles and reins, in their children's hands, and the journey began. "Remember," said Bree, "keep together, if we can. If not, meet at the tombs of the ancient kings, and whoever gets there first must wait for the others." "And remember," said Shasta, "don't you 2 horses forget yourselves and start talking, whatever happens."